one of the things I'd like you to do in the first week is go on a sculpture walk or a three-dimensional exploration. Your world, my world, our world together is three-dimensional. We live in a world of height, width, and depth. We live in a world where objects are all around us. And I want to give you an invitation to start looking at these objects around you and starting to pay attention to the qualities. How do they communicate with you? What are their aspects? For instance, behind me is a simple redwood fence, right? You can see it's a fence. It's got certain qualities. It's relatively plain. It's just the boards of redwood. You can see though, it's got a parallel structure. You can see that the boards are lined up parallel. It's got a vertical structure, so it's going from top to bottom. These are starts of ways of describing, putting adjectives on to the three-dimensional objects and learning the concepts, the variables, and the principles that are all around you. And if you look behind you here, again, the fence, you can see there's a scalloped edge. And then you can see the background, there's a field in the background. So that's one way of starting to look at the world. I want you to look at everything as we walk around. I want you to look at everything and start to find ways of describing what it is you're looking at. And looking, being more and more sensitive. Every object in your world does communicate something to you. For instance, the fence really clearly communicates a barrier or a containment. And so, but all fences are different. So now I have walked to a different place, and you can see there's a fence behind me. It does have some of the same qualities of the other fence. It has narrower strips that are vertical, and it is a parallel structure, but then there's a quality of layering. So you see the strips, and they are inserted into the chain link fence style. So you can see that there's that layering. And then there's a layering of the nature of these ivy plants that are growing on top of it and through it. And then of course, the final layering of the masks that I've made over the years and hung on this fence. So this is a much more complicated three-dimensional surface and three-dimensional form than the first fence, because it's still performing the function of fence, but it's got other ways. It's displaying, it's supporting, it's hanging, and there's layering, kind of giving you mixed signals, making it a much more complicated and complex three-dimensional object. So as you walk in the world, I want you to pay attention. One way to start, just one thing to begin to think about, is look at cars. We can all see cars everywhere we go. Cars are everywhere around us. And so I want you to look at those cars and ask yourself, what is it about those cars that gives you a sense of their what do they feel like? What is their design trying to tell you? Billions of dollars are spent on car design. Each company is trying to find the car that everybody wants to drive. So you'll see patterns over the years. Suddenly someone will put out a certain design, like that narrow, kind of low profile, scooped kind of quality that you see in a Prius. It was a new thing when it first came out, and then pretty much every company was trying to capture that interest of that sleek wind kind of collaborative form. And so as you look at each of these cars, you'll get a sense. What is a truck trying to tell you? What is a sports car trying to tell you? How do the three-dimensional design principles in those vehicles communicate something to you? And what is it they're trying to communicate? Their main message is, I want you to buy me, to possess me. How are they doing that? What messages are they sending? And literally everything in your world is communicating with you on these kinds of levels. So enjoy a good sculpture walk. Try to find as many things as you can around you that you can start to begin to look at the principles and the design elements that are in each of them. And then what you'll see is that as you get into these kinds of ideas, what you'll begin to notice is that everything does have something it's communicating to you. Everything has some qualities. And your reading in Launching the Imagination will help you begin to understand some of the most pronounced or common of these qualities. behind me here, you can see that there is a palm tree. And if we look at it, it is really quite a massive form in space. Look how big that is. It's a massive tree. It has a great deal of presence in this area. And you can see next to it is a flower which is called a hollyhock. They too, for flowers, they have such a high scale, and they're really have a quality of abundance. There's color elements going on, all kinds of things you can begin to think about. So I hope you enjoy your sculpture walk, and we'll talk about it when we meet.